Yay. So, so happy. So happy.
Well,
Because Randy and I have been trying to have this conversation for a while. So I'm going to introduce him to you guys, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation that we were having, or that I was having with myself.
you yourself and you stuck, but I'm sure it was a great conversation. I'm
It
looking
was a
forward
great conversation with me, myself,
to
and
it.
I. I do so love intelligent conversation. So,
Bless your heart for being understanding and patient with me.
oh, of course, of course. So I want to introduce Randy. Randy McNeely is known as Captain Kindman, and he is on a mission to grow love in the world. He is a speaker, an author, and a kindness advocate, and he inspires people to practice courageous kindness, choosing love in every situation. Through stories, teaching, and media, he helps others build bridges, heal division, and create a ripple effect of kindness that transforms lives. And I'm not going to lie, Randy, when you weren't showing up, I was like, oh no, oh no, I hope everything's okay. And then what I noticed is, in my old self, in my old past self, I used to be a lot more reactive. I used to be a lot more like defensive, like what happened? Why did this person do this? And like and this is a natural self-defensive
Yeah,
mechanism that a lot of people go through. And yet, when we choose kindness, not just for others, but for ourselves first,
yeah,
we can actually respond with a lot more compassion, understanding, and we don't know what we don't know,
yeah, yeah.
you know?
You never know when somebody's had something happen, something's going on. Now,
Right.
I, as I explained to you, I had no excuse this morning. That, and anyway, I'm just appreciate your patience and your kindness with me.
Yeah.
You said something important there, though. When I define kindness as love in action, embracing every behavior by which we show value and appreciation for ourselves. Notice that ourselves
Mm,
is first, and for
yeah.
others.
Yeah.
If we're not willing to step back and give ourselves kindness, and
Yeah.
that involves a multitude of things. I mean, taking care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and being willing to be forgiving when we make mistakes, which
Yeah.
is hard when, especially. I mean, I understand how hard that is because I'm a recovering perfectionist. It's a challenge, but if we're
Yeah.
not willing to do that for ourselves, it's really hard to do it for other people. We might say we are, but are we? Because
Right.
it's particularly if we're not taking care of ourselves physically. We're not going to be around to help anybody else.
Now, what's interesting about that is somebody could say, well, I'm choosing kindness for myself by being angry at that person and offended and cutting them out of my life. But is that really truly kind?
Explain to me how that's kind. That's what
Right.
I say. How's that? How's cutting somebody off, cutting them out of your life? Okay, so is I guess it depends on what the situation is. That's
Mm,
the answer to that's going to totally depend. I mean, for example,
mm,
I've told you before, I'm a survivor of multiple forms of childhood abuse,
yeah.
and I didn't cut my father off, who was the perpetrator. I
Mm,
was still, but I cut off staying long periods of time with him. I cut off regular interaction. I got because
yeah.
and he didn't hardly know my kids. I just wasn't going to put them in that environment. It wasn't
Right.
that I didn't still love him despite everything that happened. He was my father, and I still loved him. But
Right.
I also set boundaries, and
And
there,
you set boundaries with kindness.
yeah, you can set
Right.
boundaries with kindness. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know of any situation where choosing anger over
Yeah.
time. Now, when I say that, every one of us gets angry. We do.
Yeah.
Have experiences,
Yeah.
and it's okay to feel angry. Angry.
Right.
What's not okay is holding on to the anger. When
That's key.
the,
Yeah.
if I choose to embrace and hold on to anger,
Mm,
that's choosing the complete opposite of kindness. That's
yeah.
embracing and choosing because kind, like I said, kindness is love in action. And
Right.
love and anger don't go together. They're like oil and water.
And anger is not a shield that a lot of people think it
Yeah.
is. It's actually a stifling, drowning place, because the original origins of anger comes from, usually, very, very often, anger comes from a place of fear. And that comes from our survival instinct,
Yeah.
right? So if our survival instinct is like, oh no, something might be going wrong here. Anger helps us in that fight mode, in the hyperarousal response. It helps us go, I got to defend myself.
Yeah.
That's what anger does. It's a stimulus to get us to help survive that situation, but it's just that momentary situation. It's
Well,
not
and you think
meant to
about it too, a
continue.
lot of times it's a sign of insecurity. You know, my father, you know, God rest him, you know, he's been dead for 21 years now. But I mean, one of the things that I think one of the mechanisms he triggered a lot of the time, he got angry and upset about something because of his own insecurity. You know,
Yeah.
he didn't feel good about him. He didn't feel good about himself. So he took those angry feelings, and he had grown up. You know, I didn't learn this till after the fact. You know, and my grandma, when I knew her, was totally laid back, calm, quiet. I mean, she could get upset
Yeah.
sometimes, but I never heard her yell or say mean things or things like that. I didn't find out, you know, from my uncle, my father's brother. You know, my cousin just asked him one day, he says, why are you guys all so grouchy? Because that's just the way they were. They were all grouchy. Him and
Yeah.
both my other, you know, my dad and both his brothers were grouchy, grumpy, yelled a lot. And so he says, well, because that's the way mom was.
You know, in my family, anger was the way we communicate. It was, everything was fine until it wasn't, and then everything was explosive.
Then it was like, yeah,
And
chaos.
and the explosive communication was, it was interesting. Me and my oldest sister would fight back with my parents. Like, it would be just a screaming matches. My middle sister would walk away and she would go and hole up and she would just disappear. And over the years, I always thought, and I always, you know me, I go to the communication place, right? What are we trying to communicate with this? We have to get defensive. Like, this is the only way to communicate, is that when things are hunky dory, things are hunky dory. But when things are not, the only way to communicate how we feel about that is through yelling and screaming.
Yeah,
And that is what I learned. And I learned that at a very early age, and I had to unlearn that. And I fully believe
it's
it's
hard.
possible. It's hard,
It's
really
hard
hard.
because I mean that's
Not gonna lie, it's hard.
the
Yeah.
same way with, you know, in my family. I mean, my dad yelled a lot. My dad was very authoritarian,
Mm.
and you know, and if you looked at him cross-eyed when he was feeling cranky or something, you know, I mean,
Right,
it was like you set off a trigger. You know, my
right.
sister and I were just talking about this. We wonder if he was bipolar. I mean, because his mood swings were just crazy, and,
Yeah,
and he yelled all the time and
yeah,
criticized all the time. And so that's what you know, when things got
yeah,
upsetting at home or at school or other places, what did I do? I yelled and got
yeah.
upset at first
Right,
till I
right.
learned that wasn't okay. And unfortunately, outside my house, I got pretty good at controlling it and stuff when I was out
Yeah.
in public. But at home,
Oh,
all gloves were off. We just, you know, it was,
but the longer it lasts, the more pervasive it gets, and the more pervasive it gets into the other environments you live in. Like, one of the things that I noticed with my mom, and I would get so embarrassed about this, was that we would go to a store and something would happen, and she would start yelling and arguing and fighting with the cashier or the whatever, the salesperson. And I was like, oh my
we'd
God,
be
what is, you
dying.
know?
Like,
And again, when we think about it, if anger is a survival instinct, again, that is usually at the heart of it is fear of loss of something, fear of not of something going wrong, fear of not being in control, fear of, like, justice, unfairness, things like that.
yeah.
And we get stuck in that. So what I'm curious about is, what's the other way around? What does kindness look like in communication? When we are communicating with others, especially when things get hard, what does that look like in action?
It's interesting. I was just having this conversation with a good friend of mine named Alan Williams, from the UK.
Yeah.
And sometimes, there's a key scripture. I'm religious. I'm a Christian, and one of the key scriptures, in fact, I just read it this morning. It's in Proverbs 15. It talks about a soft answer turneth away wrath. And sometimes when somebody's really angry and in your face, just taking the time to stop and say, hey, I can tell this has really upset you.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to talk to you about it. Maybe there might be a better time we could talk when you're a little calmer, things are a little calmer.
Yeah.
We can talk, talk this through. Or, if we can just step back for a minute here and just take a breath.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can, find out what is so upsetting or talk about the situation or whatever. And I found that works a whole lot better than reacting and getting angry and in their face. Because all that does is just, it's like two fires coming together. When you see you have two pieces of wood that come together and the flame goes even higher.
Yep.
That's exactly what that's like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible because it's basically just putting tinder on the fire. It's just making it worse. I always find that, okay, so there's a wonderful psychological phenomenon called the emotional contagion. And the emotional contagion is because we have mirror neurons that are dispersed across our brain. And so they mirror in other people. So let's just say you're online at the checkout, right, at a supermarket, and somebody's in front of you and the line is taking, the person in front of them it's just taking a long time. And you suddenly hear them grumbling, and this person in front of you, they're going, oh my God, oh, it's just taking so long. Oh, this is for, and right. And then they meet your eyes and they're like, oh, isn't this taking? And you will find where you might have just been standing there pleasant and perfectly fine and just waiting. And suddenly you're feeling a little more agitated and you're starting to feel a little stressed. And then you're looking at the time and you're like, oh yeah, it is taking longer. And then you're getting antsy and you're like, oh yeah, I do have other things to do. I got to get out of here. And it's the survival instinct that's being triggered of like, am I going to survive this situation to be able to get to the next situation, to be able to succeed in my day? This is a huge psychological component. But we do trigger one another with those. The emotional contagion is one of the strongest forms of social influence. So yes, if somebody's facing you with anger, often it's easy to pick up their anger and respond in kind.
It is.
What's harder, but we can practice it with intention, is to say, okay, yeah, this is taking a little longer than I would have liked, but you know what? It's okay,
Yeah.
And the person in front of us is just struggling and they're having a hard time and the cashier's having a hard time and something must be going on. And I'm sure they're definitely not happy. They're probably feeling embarrassed. They're probably feeling the pressure of everybody else to get a move on. Nowhere is this more apparent than on an airplane with children. I don't know.
You're thinking about airplane and children, and as we were having the conversation, I was thinking about children in a car.
Oh,
I'm thinking about, Dad, are we there yet?
are they?
Right. 2 minutes later, are we almost there? Right. 30 seconds later, are we there yet? Like,
yeah.
It's 30 seconds later than the last time you asked.
Right. But it's very easy. It's easy to get that triggering, right? Because what it's actually triggering is what a lot of people don't realize is it's triggering our defense mechanism.
Yeah. Well, and as a parent, you almost feel like responding like the guy in Incredibles. Remember that?
Right.
Yeah. There that? Well, get there when we get there.
Yes. Yes. I love that one. But I find it interesting on an airplane because other people get really aggravated by the kid who's crying and the kids are being difficult, and then other people's aggravation. And now the parent is feeling this spotlight effect of like, like now I'm not just dealing with my kids, I'm dealing with everybody else's annoyance about my kids. So you're feeling all this pressure. And imagine being the person who could walk in and say, hey, do you need a little bit of help? You need to go to the bathroom real quick and I'll entertain your kids. We're not going anywhere, I'll just, just let me hold the, and maybe you've got kids and like, I'm happy to hold the baby for you. I'm happy. Let me entertain your kiddo, you know, and show him a little trick or show him something. And then it just takes the temperature down for everyone when we can do that, when we can step in with that. And I think that takes a lot of courage.
We've been there. You know, I have 5 kids, and I've flown on airplanes with 3 of them. You know, saying 3 of them at the same time. Let's see, no, 4 of them at the same time. When we lived in the UK, and when we traveled back from the UK to the United States, we were over there. You know, I was over there working for a company for 3 years, and we at about the midway point, we traveled back to the US, and we had 4 kids to travel with, and one of them was 2, the other one was 4, or the other one, no, I guess there's 5, and the others were like 8 and 10, and get them all on a plane.
Crazy. That's a lot.
You know,
Yeah,
it's an interesting challenge, and God bless the lady that when we were, you know, on the first plane we were coming, you know, flying from Manchester to Chicago, this sweet little old lady, bless her heart, she says to my wife, because I can't remember if my son or my daughter was acting up and they're just stressing out. She says something like, you know, I have 6 kids and I know just what it's like. Are you okay if I give your son this thing? And then she gave him some little toy or something to play with. Oh. And he just sat there and fiddled with that for like the next 8 hours or something like that. And God bless her. I was so happy. I was like,
yeah, yes. I love that. I think, and that is what kindness looks like in real conversation, in real action, is stepping in and saying, hey, can I offer you some, can I help? You know, it's these offers of help, these offers of support. And even like you said, like with your father, like not getting reactive or shutting down or getting defensive, but rather saying, you know what, I'm going to choose this path because this is what kindness looks like for my family. And I need to keep that steady. I need to keep that boat going steady. And I can't destabilize it with someone who doesn't choose kindness, right? I think that's so important. And I had to do that with my oldest sister. I had to cut her off because she chose to make things, you know, she chose our parents' path of the arguments. And look, my parents weren't always that way. They weren't always argumentative. As I said, we lived in a lot of Jekyll and Hyde situation. Everything was hunky-dory and then everything was explosive fire. There wasn't a whole lot of in between. I learned the nuance of the in-between and the transparency of having hard conversations with people that is still kind and courageous, because sometimes you need to say to somebody, you know, I have tried many different ways. I've tried to offer assistance. I've tried this way. I've tried that way. And I can't be a slave to your anger. I can't be beholden to your life. I have to live my own life. And that's not shutting down, and that's not being defensive. That's simply telling them the truth and setting your boundaries and really understanding that, you know what, it takes a lot of courage to say, I can't choose this path with you because I don't want to get absorbed into anger, defensiveness, jealousy, betrayal, constant resentment, betrayal feelings, and all of this, that just this incendiary life that you live. I can't choose that path because that's not kind to me.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to do that. Yeah. You have to set those boundaries. I mean, there was a while when, you know, a friend of mine and I just had to just not talk, and it's not that we did, but it seemed like every time we got together, it would end up in a contentious situation. And I finally just said, listen, you know, I love and appreciate you. I'm grateful that you're my friend and stuff like that. But at the same time, I can't continue to go on, you know, in this situation where every time we're together, it gets contentious. I don't want to do that. And I'm happy to be your friend and to do things with you only when we get to a point where we can do it without bringing all this other stuff up. And so until then, you know, when you're ready to do that, ready to let these things go, because I'm at that point. I
Yeah.
don't care about these things anymore. I'm not going to bring them up. When you're ready to let those things go and get back to being friends, reach out to me.
Yeah.
And it took a while. You know, we finally,
You left the door open. That was good, right?
it took a while. And it takes courage. I mean, that's why I call it courageous kindness. There are times when, you know, it takes courage to set those boundaries. It also takes courage to step up
Mm-hmm.
and step in and not react and not respond in a way that's unkind, you know, ourselves. It takes a lot of self-control. You know, I firmly believe in the teaching, love your enemy. It's not easy.
It's never easy.
It's
And
not,
sometimes you need to love your enemy from afar.
yeah, well, and that's,
Right?
you don't, I mean, you can love people and not hang out with them, you know,
Right.
and you
Right.
don't have to, you know, I
Mm.
still, you know, I still love some of my friends and stuff like that, but they've chosen different paths. You know, I still care
Yeah.
about what happens to them and things, and if they needed help or whatever, I would be there to help when I can, when it's reasonably possible. But at the same time, you know, we don't hang out anymore
Yeah.
because they've chose their path, and I've chosen a different path, and
Yeah.
that's,
I get it. And I
that's
think what we're talking about here is sometimes choosing love in the hard moments feels hard, but it usually feels hard because of of conditioning, because of fear, because of ego, because of the psychology of the survival instinct, because of so much that you've been conditioned to, that it feels hard to love. But we can do that. We can. I often say to myself, you know, when I think about my older sister, I say to myself, like, I hope she has a life, finds peace in her life. That is my greatest hope for her, that she can find some measure of peace. We may never, and very unlikely that we will ever see each other again, but I hope that she finds peace. If she can live the rest of her life on a peaceful path, yeah, that would alleviate a part of my soul that hurts for her. But I can't. It doesn't mean I will let her have a destructive path in my life. That's not okay with me. I can
yeah,
choose to live separately from her and still hope for her to find peace in her life. So as I walk the life of, you know, a peaceful path in my own life,
yeah,
I think that's hard for people to understand. But I do have to say this. I've seen so many people who cut people off way too quickly. They do a really fast cutoff. I think there needs to be more nuanced conversation, more process, more possibility of trying to evolve together
so,
before you take that path.
you know, you bring up an interesting point. We live in a time, particularly here in the United States, when there's a lot of division and polarization over politics.
Yep.
And we've gotten to a point where some people are just, you know, I mean, they can't, oh, you supported Trump, or you supported Biden, or you know, oh, you supported Trump, I can't talk to you. Sorry. I don't want to have anything to do with you.
Right.
Or you supported Biden. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't talk to you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. If you don't believe the way I believe, then you need to cease to exist. That's
Yeah.
how that the point of dehumanization that some people have gotten to, and they're promoting that idea. Say,
Yep.
you know, that some study that was just done, you know, a poll that I can't remember what percentage of Republicans and what percentage of Democrats said that if a big portion of the other party died, it wouldn't matter.
Oh,
And how brazen is that? I mean, how have we gotten to that point? If we're embracing that dehumanization, and
yes.
it's a lose lose. It's a
Yes.
zero sum game.
Yeah.
There's no winning. There is no winning solution in any of that.
Yeah. That's
And
not
so,
kind in
and
any way, shape, or form.
unless we can get to where, you know, we can talk to people that we disagree with, because that's the
Yeah.
only way things are going to change.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, I've created what I call the courageous kindness operating system. I'm in the process of
Mm.
working on a book and things like that. But see, care, do, share. see people, think about people as human beings that
Mm.
deserve to be valued and appreciated. Is it easy? No, it takes work. It takes work to do it. And then caring takes work. And what I mean by caring is taking the time to ask thoughtful questions, to get to know people and listen with the intent to understand. When somebody disagrees with you, there's a reason, and there's a reason you agree. Okay, I may not necessarily agree with that, but help me understand why you feel the way you feel. Is there a
Mm.
driver? What's the why behind it? How
Yeah.
would you be willing to, just share with me? And if we're
Yeah.
willing to ask those questions and then to listen, not just ask them and then be ready to, be
Right.
half-heartedly listening, figuring out in your mind what the next answer is, what
Right.
you want to say, based on what you want to say, not based on what they're saying, but actually listening and giving some reflection back to them. Okay, so
Right.
you feel this way because, or whatever it might be.
Right.
When
And
we're
what I'm hearing is this from you. Can you
Yeah,
explain that further?
yeah,
Active listening is completely different than reactive listening.
exactly.
Active
I
listening is
like the way you
listening to
put that.
understand and
Yeah,
listening to understand that perspective. And if there's something you don't understand, ask more questions to get
yeah.
more clarification. But we have more reactive listening in this day and age, which is really just
It's
hearing the
listening
words and so
to
that
us,
you can argue your
and
point.
yeah, exactly.
That's not kind.
Well, and so
That's
it's not. Well, and think about this though.
and it's
When
not
you actually,
communication.
when you take the time to listen to understand,
Yep.
you can't. And how does that impact how you feel toward that person once you start to understand them better?
Right.
And they're taking the time to ask you the same kind of questions and getting to understand you better. What happens
Yeah.
there?
You connect on a deeply human level.
And what? How does that impact how you feel?
Oh, so much
It
more related.
shifts your heart.
Yeah, it
It
does.
shifts your heart. The first part, changing how you think and see about and see people, shift your
Yeah,
mind, then shift your
yeah,
heart.
yeah,
And when your heart is shifted and you feel different about people, how does it impact your behavior towards them?
yeah, I love
To
that.
make you want to
So
lash out or get more angry? No. What it
right,
does, it makes you want to show value and appreciation through the way you
yeah,
act toward them. Show respect. I
yeah,
respect you, Rona.
yeah,
I respect you, Randy.
yeah,
And so you want to behave. You want to identify. You take the time to think. Okay, I need to show them respect. I need to listen. And you might find other behaviors that specifically show value and appreciation to them. You remember the book? There was a book, The Five Love Languages. Well, what's their love
right.
language? How do they respond to certain behaviors and stuff like that that make them
Mhm.
feel good, like they matter, like they're important.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
think what's happening in this day and age, which is really sad, is that polarization has pushed us into this very black and white thinking. It's an either or situation when life is much more complex than that. We live in the gray. We live in this space where things are so much more complex, so much more nuanced, so much more complicated than we give them allowance for. And so it's a pick a team, but the reality is there are no teams. This is not, we are becoming way too tribalistic. And we, as a species, because we're a relational species, we relate to one another, but we are less encouraged in this day and age to relate to one another, to actually try to look at it from another person's viewpoint. There's something that I've been talking a lot about lately, at least in my personal circle, of what's called role reversal. When we can really truly dive into the deep methodology of role reversal, of truly putting ourselves in someone else's shoes, of truly trying to get an understanding of the place that they're coming from, we can widen our scope of understanding so much more. And it becomes so much more impactful to see the shades of gray going on and to not be hardened into one way or another, and that's it. And if we can start to teach that to our younger generations who are unfortunately being encouraged into this black and white thinking, even just the algorithmic aspect of, swiping one way or another. You only have two options. But when we stop with that duality of two options, we start to realize there are so many more perspectives in life than we give it credit for. One given experience can have infinite possibility of perspectives with any in that given experience, and we need to teach people how to get comfortable with seeing all shapes and perspectives around any given experience. But
Yeah.
people are not comfortable with that, because to that way of thinking there's a little bit of chaos to it, but there is no real chaos, because life isn't random. Life has a lot more purpose than you give it allowance for.
Yeah.
And when we move away from this black and white thinking into this beautiful opportunity for gray thinking, we give ourselves the opportunity to walk into a situation and saying both and can be true. Both
Yeah.
this and that can be true simultaneously. And that's okay. It's all right to have that reality on the ground. And it gives us a lot more freedom to choose humanity over a side.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, think about this. We live in a time when social media, what does social media have a tendency to lean towards? It has a tendency to lean towards building tribes.
Yes.
These are the people that like my stuff, and the people that don't. These are the people that I like and the people I don't like. And it has a tendency, and social media has exacerbated. We wonder, you listen to the talking heads on the news and stuff like that, and they wonder, they fret over, what has happened over these last, 2 decades, that things have gotten so much worse and stuff. And I can honestly, I'm willing to bet a study could show that with the internet coming into being and with the advent of social media, that the division and polarization just started to spike.
Oh, there are studies. They are out there already, and they are coming to a head that it's clear. It's actually the great rewiring of our brain. It's crazy how polarizing it is. And I cannot tell you a single person that I have met who said that they took a break from social media and felt worse. Every single person that I've met who talks about having taken breaks from social media feels so much better.
Well,
so much better.
Think about it. If people are living in an echo chamber,
Yeah,
where they're only interacting with their tribe,
right,
and they're not willing to try to talk to somebody else from a different tribe or that doesn't believe exactly, how is anything going to get resolved?
Nothing will.
Nothing will. Because if you're not talking to people, if you're not taking the time to talk to and get to know and understand people who don't necessarily agree with you on everything, then there's no way to resolve the situation, at least peacefully. And if I'm going to try to get aggressive and be contentious and figure out things through anger, that's not going to resolve anything either. Because let's say my anger and my hate, and I have power. I gain power over you, Yorona. I gain power over your life. I tell you what what you have to do. I have control over you. How's that going to win your heart to me?
Right. It won't. It just puts us in a fear-based reactivity place. I want to have a further conversation, but I want to ask you this last question before we conclude. I'm curious, what might be one small practice that strengthens courageous kindness in everyday communication? What might be something like that you could give people? What would be one small practice? Yeah.
2 words. Love people. Get up every day and think, how can I show love for somebody today? Love for myself, look in the mirror and say, I can show love for myself by X, or I can show love for this person by X. And it's all through, love is delivered through kindness. So what kind of action can I do? As simple as that. So I'm thinking, what little thing can I, and they don't have to be big things. I write about kindness nearly every 2 or 3 days. I share what I've done. I've got a growing love campaign going on LinkedIn. And a lot of, I don't share any great big grandiose things that I'm doing. I talk about, I folded some clothes for my wife. I made breakfast for my daughter. I went and mowed the lawn for a friend. I held the door open for somebody. You know, we planted in our garden together. It was kindness to us. You know, I talk about, you know, kindness to us and kindness to others. It's those little things, little simple actions that end up becoming the big things, because it's the little acts that build the relationships over time.
Yeah.
You know, and you can so take the time to love people. And when I say that, that includes loving yourself.
That is so important. Start with loving yourself and then move into loving with
Moving out
others.
there. Yep.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Randy. This is wonderful. I'm so glad you got to jump in. Yay.
Thank you, Yorona. Thank you so much for your patience and for still being my friend.
Oh, always. And in case anybody didn't realize that Randy, because Randy is Captain Kaiman, he's wearing his cape,
I don't know how you
right? And his shirt that says Captain Kaiman.
got the
So,
kind man shirt on. Look
yeah,
at that.
yeah.
I'm in, as my friend Alan says, you're in the uniform, Randy.
Yes, yes, the uniform. I
Yeah.
love it. And thank you so much. This is, I hope that for people who are listening, for people who are watching, or for people who will watch it back later, that it will imbue within them a measure of peace, that they can choose kindness, because it is a choice that we make every day. We can
Yeah.
choose it with intention. And when we make that choice, we feel better about ourselves and we feel better about the world around us. And I think you're the perfect person for it. So everybody should go on LinkedIn and follow Randy. He's awesome. Randy, what are some other ways that people can reach you?
Go to CaptainKindman.com and check out, you know, my website there and the speaking opportunities that are available. You know, I'm happy to come anywhere, and I can tailor, you know, there are 4 subjects that I focus on, but I can tailor any of them to any age group or any kind of organization, etc. The other thing is they can check out, you know, the Kindness Factor Productions, which is my film company. You know, we've had a film out there called For Such a Time as This. That's a documentary that's won 17, had 17 nominations and won 6 awards. And you know, if you've got a great story that you're sitting on that you thought, you know, how do I tell this? Be on the lookout, because we're going to be coming out with a new, fully, you know, vetted documentary specialist library just for you.
That is
So you can learn how to do it. Anyway, so that's
awesome.
where you can find me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And to everybody listening and watching, I hope that you have a lovely weekend and choose to communicate with kindness. Choose to step forward into your life with all of the beautiful intention that we give, that we have the opportunity to give to every day.
Can I throw one more thing out there before we?
Yes.
Check out Kindness Worldwide. I'm a Kindness Worldwide ambassador. Check out their website, kindnessworldwide.org. Get on and learn what you can about Rock Kindness, or rock.org, which is Random Opportunities for Kindness. It's a new initiative they're getting ready to launch, so you can learn more about them. A great opportunity, again, to spread more kindness. And check out James Kellogg for Ripple Core.
All right.
Ways to spread it everywhere.
Thank you. Yay.